All right, everyone, welcome to today's National Heritage Area Best Practices Call. My name is Heather Fieser from the Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area, and I'd like to welcome you to the November National Heritage Area Best Practices Call, where we are going to be talking about different aspects of national, some work with national heritage areas and with indigenous tribes. And then also we have a special guest with us today from the National Park Service. Jennifer Talken-Spaulding she will be on here in a minute. I'll make her big, is the Bureau Cultural Anthropologist in the Office of Tribal Relations and American Cultures for the National Park Service. And she's going to be sharing about an initiative that she's going to be talking about today, and is like right after this, giving it to a much larger group of people. So we are the very first people to hear this information. So Jennifer, if you would like to share your PowerPoint now, and then after she is done, we should be hearing from Angie Chandler from Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. All right, Jennifer.
All right.
How's it working?
Getting it up here and begin. That should do it.
We still see the slideshow, so it's not in. There you go. It's good.
All right. Now we got it. And I'm going to move. If I move this box with you all in it, actually, I'm going to move it down to my other screen. There we go. All right. So you're seeing this. Whoops. You're seeing the slides, right?
Correct. We can see the slides and we watched you move them. So you're good.
Okay, good. And if you do have your presenter view up, I'm still going to stay on camera just because I think that's nice if you want to have somebody else to look at while you're looking at slides. I'm happy to do that. So thank you, Heather, for the introduction. Thank you, Heritage Areas, for all the work that you do. I'm a big fan of Heritage Areas. My master's thesis was on Baltimore Heritage Area before it became a National Heritage Area. So I've been interested in around Heritage Areas for a long time. So happy to be with you here today. My current position is the Bureau Cultural Anthropologist of the National Park Service, and it's in our Office of Tribal Relations and American Cultures. And I was part of the team in the National Park Service who drafted a new policy memo on co-stewardship this year, which we launched in September. And as Heather was just saying, and as I said earlier, we're going to be starting a series of webinars today for the National Park Service broadly. Today's the first one right after this. So I do have to leave at like 2:30 today. So we'll just get started and dive in. I just want to give you a little overview about where this came from and what it all means. And I think how you all could be involved and engaged in this. So it's the co-stewardship policy memo started with a secretary's order that was published last year, almost a year ago, a couple of days ago. And this secretary's order was a directive to federal agencies, particularly Department of Interior and Agriculture, to include tribal expertise and tribal interests and any trust or treaty obligations that we have to tribes as federal land managers in our planning and management decisions. This highlighted a set of intentions to move forward using indigenous knowledge, incorporating that into planning purposes, and trying to move beyond just traditional consultation into a more collaborative and co-equal management stance with tribes that are either adjacent to or have traditional association with Park Service areas in the National Park Service as it applies. So to implement that secretary's order, we were directed to create a new policy document, and that's what we wrote this year. This policy memorandum, which was launched in September, was the policy document to try and guide the implementation of this new collaborative responsibility with tribes. This is not anything you have to remember, but I just have it in here so that you can see it briefly, because there's a lot that is the same in these new policy documents. They're based on years and years of existing laws and policies and guidance that the federal government abides by. So I give that for people's reference in the future. But there's really three main things that are new in the policy document, in the policy memorandum. So the first thing that is new is that we were trying to be very inclusive in the Park Service policy memorandum, that it wasn't just federally recognized tribes and Native Hawaiians, but it was the broadest definition of traditionally associated groups wherever the National Park Service sits, wherever we are. So this policy applies to federally recognized tribes, Alaska Native entities, Native Hawaiian organizations, other traditionally associated groups that are indigenous and associated to park areas. So that could mean Guam, American Saipan, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, all those places where Park Service is. And so the language in our policy memo is very inclusive of all of those groups of people. The second thing that the policy memorandum does is give a definition of co-stewardship. So the easiest way to talk about it is co-stewardship is the biggest umbrella. And there's a spectrum of ways that we work and build relationships with tribes and other associated groups. And that can include things like cooperative planning, cooperative ethnobotany projects. It can include agreements. It can include informal working relationships that may not have any type of an agreement. And it can include co-management. So co-stewardship is a big umbrella. And all of those other forms of formalizing working relationships fit within that spectrum of co-stewardship. There is a distinction between co-stewardship and co-management, and we want everybody to understand that. Co-management is legislated. So if there's a spectrum of ways that we work with tribes, there is not a hierarchy. One way is not better than another. It's just a range. And co-management is one of those options, but it is a legislated responsibility. And in that co-management scenario, generally a portion of either the responsibility is shared or given up to your partner. And in this case, it's tribes that we're talking about. So co-management and co-stewardship are not the same, but co-management is a part of the co-stewardship spectrum. So that's an important distinction that is made here. And the other thing that we talk about is accountability in the policy memo. There really is an intention to move the needle on beyond consultation, doing collaborative planning, and working closely with tribes that are associated with these areas or are part of homelands, the areas that we are managing, in your case, national heritage areas that you're managing. They are part of traditional homelands of tribes that maybe have even been removed from those areas. We still want to be as broad in our scope as possible in making these planning and management decisions. And yeah, I'm going to stop sharing there. So I wanted to be quick so that we could ask and answer questions. I am going to share with you a resource that I was thinking might be helpful. And let me grab it real quick and drop it into the chat. One of the things that is people always want to know is how do you do this? How do you do this work? So one of the things that we like to point to is the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation has a number of resources about working with tribes. And they have some on-demand training that's available for free on their website. And I just put the link in the chat because that is a really good resource. If you haven't been to the ACHP site, I always recommend it. And it's a good way to kind of get started. And another thing that I always recommend in the realm of co-stewardship, start small. You don't have to walk in the door with a plan for something that's going to take 10 years to develop. You can start with, and you probably should start with, what are the common interests? What are the common goals? What are land management or heritage preservation responsibilities that tribe has, that the heritage area has, and where are those points of common ground that you could work on together? Those are wonderful conversations to begin with and see what develops. So we're not trying to, these opportunities are already there. The policy memo and the Secretary's order doesn't change what was already there. The opportunities were already there. I think what they do for the federal agency is to encourage and try to provide support so people can find a way to make those bridges. So that's really the tone of what we're talking about today in co-stewardship. And I know it's short and sweet, but that's the introduction of where we are. So I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. And I'm sure some of you are already working with tribes in some of your heritage areas. I'm familiar with a few projects that have happened over the years.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Jennifer?
You know, I don't have a question in particular, but I do have a comment, and maybe it'll lead to a question. And that is, we work very closely with the Stockbridge-Munsee community, band of Mohican Indians. Although there are no federal lands within our national heritage area, we do have other concerns that we're working with the Tribal Historic Preservation Office on, including, of course, NAGPRA issues. But just recently, one of our local governments had considered, and they have this very, very long process of determining ownership of an ancient Indian burial ground. And I don't know, is there any future where the National Park Service or any other federal agency might see working more closely with either SHPOs or TIPOs on non-federal, but possibly local government or other cultural? And I was just recently reading too, I guess the memo has probably gone around to everybody about the National Register Bulletin 38, and re-evaluating or evaluating and documenting traditional cultural places, as part of the National Register process. So there's a lot going on right now, and I'm just wondering if from where you're seeing, if there are going to be impacts either at the state or local level in the future that we might look forward to. Yeah,
I mean, all of those things that you mentioned, I would put in the category of all of this work is connected. There is latitude for federal agencies to work with adjacent landowners on preservation work right now. There is legislation in place that allows federal agencies to work with, for example, adjacent state parks and state park directors and do cooperative planning. Redwoods is a good example of that. We are just about to sign, I think it's next week, we're going to be signing the first tribal sister park agreement with Effigy Mounds National Park Site and the Iowa tribe, who has their own national park on tribal lands. And if you keep your brain together about how this all works, tribes have tribal lands and they are sovereign nations. So if they determine on tribal lands that they want to create a park area, they can call it a national park. It's not that it has been designated by Congress or any other way. It has been designated by the tribe on tribal lands as a tribal national park. And so we are about to sign our first tribal sister park agreement in about a week. And so I'm sure you're going to see some news about that. And so I think they are all connected. I mean, I think it's ongoing work, it's ongoing relationships, but it's trying to find new doors and new opportunities in that. I put a link in the chat earlier about, and I see Liz, thank you, put in the TCP bulletin chat link to the Find a TIPO. The Tribal Historic Preservation Program at the moment is part of my office, our portfolio. And so we are the office that signs the agreements with the tribal leader and the director of the National Park Service to establish a TIPO. And we do that on behalf of the Secretary of the Interior. And once the TIPO is established, then you all become familiar with TIPOs and the larger federal preservation family. So that's our database site that is the source for, if you're looking for a contact, a TIPO contact at a tribe, you can look there. So yeah, I think it is an exciting time. The White House Tribal Nations Summit is going to be in 2 weeks. And I would stay tuned because there are a number of new documents that have been in the works for the past several months that I think are going to be released in a couple of weeks. And I think one of the major focus is going to be on Indigenous knowledge. So I think you can stay tuned and look for that.
All good, very exciting things happening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Jennifer has a few minutes before she has to jump off. Does anybody else have anything they would like to add or ask? Okay, Dave, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to whether you have staff available to assist us in the process of connecting with our local tribes. And in particular, we have tribes that don't always agree with one another. And it would be helpful to have a third party assisting with resolving different points of view, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right, I do. And I'm going to put, there's 2 things I'm going to put in the chat is our Office of Native American Affairs office. And if you look at that, that will get you, there's a contact page in there, and that will get you to regional contacts. And I think, I mean, our staff of our office is exactly 2 people at the moment, and both program managers. So the best that we could do is probably help to give you the resources. And then if there are questions, I think we'd always be happy to take like a call and talk things through. To make introductions if we can, but really the people who know those connections best are at the regional level. So I think it's good for you all to know the regional tribal liaisons in the Park Service and the regional tribal affairs staff in the Park Service. And that contact information is on the Office of Native American Affairs website. And this website that I'm adding right now is our website for our program. Anthropology has my email in there, contact information, as well as the Park NAGPRA program and the TIPO program contact. So that's what we've done before. I mean, we've invited heritage areas to participate with TIPOs and other partners on presentations that we've done over the years jointly. So yeah, I'm always up for those kind of conversations. But locally, the people who know those relationships best are probably going to be your regional staff.
And if we're not currently a designated national heritage area, can we still get help?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I would go through probably folks here, Liz and Katie and I all work together, you know, and see if we can, they can frequently shoot messages, you know, my way, and we can see if we can help find out, you know, make some connections for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Jennifer, I just want to thank you for joining us today. I think this was really great to kind of connect the NHA world with some other folks who sit in our office and that have had this expertise. But recognizing that this policy is for land managing entities, so Park Service, lands and how they co-steward with these groups. Is there anything on the horizon around either capital C consultation or lowercase consultation with tribes as it relates to both the federal responsibility, but potentially also partners such as NHAs?
Right. I think the way that this is going to be rolled out, and it is being rolled out, is really what are the projects that are happening at a local level, and it's letting the consultation happen where it needs to happen. So there's not like a new there's not like a change in a regulation. There's no new regs that are coming out of this, for example. So something like that, a new reg would require formal consultation on a big scale if there was going to be impacts to tribes. But this is basically a policy memo that is implementing a document, that came from the Secretary and is rooted in existing authorities. So there isn't any new authority here that we have to do consultation on a national level with. What we're trying to do is roll out and introduce it so that people can be thinking about how they might find a place in this implementation. And so sometimes people are thinking of like youth projects, or maybe there's a trail project, or maybe there's an infrastructure project, or a museum, or interpretive signage project, or resource management project. I mean, we've been hearing all different kinds of things. So that consultation is going to happen around those project ideas where they're going to happen, not at a national level. So, I mean, again, to the National Heritage Area point, I think where you have heritage planning that you're doing that includes tribal lands, whether or not the tribe is still on the land or if they've been relocated, I think that's your door. That's your open door right now. So if you have a heritage area that goes over tribal lands, you want to reach out to them because that's going to enrich the visitor experience for the people who come to your spaces. And there might be some good common management goals there that could help, that could, be a symbiotic process. Yes, everybody would say all land is tribal land. That's lots of people say. So there is a, let's see, BIA. Let me find one more thing. BIA. The BIA Tribal Leaders Directory is very helpful. I'll drop that in. Because this is the BIA. Oops, I have to put it to everyone. There we go. The BIA is the entity that maintains the list of federally recognized tribes. It gets updated on an annual basis as new tribes are recognized, which doesn't happen very often, but sometimes there are name changes. Tribes change their name or update their name. And so usually it comes out in January. And then all that contact information for tribal leaders, and there's a mapping tool, is on the BIA site, Bureau of Indian Affairs site. So that's a good resource for you as well.
Jennifer, there is another question. I know you're really close on time, so I'm going to have Chris real quick ask his question.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry if I'm gonna get us close to time here, and it's something that we can also talk about later. Thanks, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Chris Moore with Maritime Washington National Heritage Area. My question, and you'll hear about our engagement with tribes in a little bit from Alex, but is as you guys have started to roll out this co-stewardship, have your counterparts on the tribal side primarily been TIPOs, or have they been other entities, other components, elements of the tribe? And I ask because we see this here in our NHA, and I know this to be true across the country, that as we do more of this engagement, which is absolutely the right thing to be doing and what we all want to be doing, there's only so much capacity on the side of tribes. TIPOs are way overworked, and they have all their own regulatory components that they're working with, and trying to do this engagement and work that way. How are you guys seeing this from the standpoint of tribes saying, hey, we're thankful, we love this, but we also it's too much or we can't do it all. Just
Yeah.
kind of want that perspective to the degree
Yeah.
that we have time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And the answer really is it depends on the project, depends on the work that you're wanting to do. So the TIPO, so let's put things in perspective for a quick second. There's 574 federally recognized tribes. There are only 212 TIPO agreements. That does not mean that other tribes don't have a TIPO office. It just means that they haven't signed an agreement with the Park Service to take officially on those historic preservation responsibilities under the National Historic Preservation Act. So 574 tribes, the tribal leader and the staff are the contacts. When a TIPO agreement is signed, that TIPO is appointed by the tribal leader, and generally there's a tribal council resolution that appoints that TIPO. And so that they take on those responsibilities. But frequently, this kind of work is maybe not involving the TIPO, or maybe the TIPO is aware of it, but maybe it's the natural resource manager. Maybe it's the wildlife biologist for the tribe, the GIS, GIS folks that are in a tribe. Maybe there's the archaeology team. I know, there's youth programming, Indian Youth Corps programming within tribes. So there could be education staff that are involved in some of these projects. So it's not necessarily going to always be the TIPO. It could be whoever is the best person on the tribe to work with that project. And again, I just kind of refer back to start small and find the common interest, because if there's a common interest and they want to do it, they will find the capacity to do it. But we don't know unless we ask. And if there's no capacity and we ask, then we've asked, and you can say, well, how much do you want to be kept involved or in the loop? Or do you want me to keep sharing information with you? And they may be able to do that. And at some point in the future, maybe they'll, be able to step into a more robust role. So it has to work for everybody. That's really the answer.
Thank you, Jennifer. You have been very wonderful, and I'm so sorry you have to jump off the call early to go to your next one, because I'm sure there'd be more questions. But thank you so much for sharing your insights and documents in the chat. So for those of us, if you would like them, I would go ahead and download them now, the links on the chat, or at least open them so you can access them after the call. So thank you, Jennifer, so much. And we're now going to turn over to Angie Chandler from Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. Hi, Angie.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good. Do you want to start with the video or the PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint, please. I'm going to hold the video till the end. Thanks. Okay. Great. And my topic that I was asked to speak on today was our relationship with Native American tribes. And of course, here in Western North Carolina, our heritage area is based in Asheville, but we work very closely with the Cherokee and have for our almost 19 years of existence here. So you can go to the next slide. First, I wanted to tell a little bit about our history and just say that even before we were created, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians was very instrumental in being a partner in what was called at that time the Blue Ridge Initiative, which was an initiative that was a precursor to our founding and actually led to our founding back in 2003. And that involved the Museum of the Cherokee Indian with the whole concept with the Cherokee story, Handmade in America, which was a regional organization, and the North Carolina Arts Council, all working together on arts and craft, music, and Cherokee history. And then our designation came in 2003. It was a designation for 25 counties in Western North Carolina, the mountains and foothills. And the case for that designation rested on our natural Cherokee heritage, craft, music, and agricultural heritage. You can go to the next slide. And of course, part of that from the Cherokee perspective is that our Cherokee history in this region goes back, what we know of, 10,000 years, but our friends in Cherokee will tell you that they've always been here. And this region is their spiritual center of what used to be their entire territory, which took up a lot of the parts of the South and even up into the Midwest. And so when we were formed as a heritage area, and even back as far as even our legislation that Congress passed, set some strict parameters of the types of organizations that would serve on our board. And one of those was that we must have a representative of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians on our board. So that was very important and a part of our beginning from the start. So next slide, please. Some of the ways that we have worked with the Cherokee through our mission is through a variety of programs that we have. We have 3 cultural trails and a grants program, and we also do marketing, heritage tourism marketing for the region, partnering with a lot of groups on that, as well as research projects. And so one of the things I will say that we supported through the Cherokee, the Museum of Cherokee Indian, was wanting to attract more group tours and to their museum. And so they began a training program that we funded through our Small Grants to Communities program. And this training program was teaching Cherokee docents about historic sites and the history of their communities in and around Cherokee, and all around what we call our far west region, which is about 7 counties that are west of Asheville. That's called the far west. And they went through a pretty stringent or rigorous training to really learn about all those historic sites and to learn about their culture. And we got such really amazing feedback from the grant that we awarded, because most of those were young folks who were becoming docents, and they were amazed to find out a lot about their own history and so many different cultural sites and the history of the craft, those kinds of things. So one of the things we have found is that when you're working with Native Americans or Indigenous people, it's really important for them to have the space and the time, and for you to provide the resources, but for them to be able to tell their own story in their way. And I think this is just a really perfect example of that. So next slide, please. Okay, just showing you some of the ways that some of the things that we do. As I said, we have a grants program. We do training on our own. We have a traditional artist directory, which is mostly musicians, but includes Cherokee artists as part of that jury directory that got started many years ago. And then our trails, the Heritage Trail, the Music Trail, and the Blue Ridge Craft Trails. And you can go to the next slide. With our Heritage Trail, it is 70 sites in Western North Carolina that focus on off the beaten path experiences. And this trail includes locations not just in what we call the Koala boundary, which is right now the federally designated area in our region for the Eastern Band. But we have so many sites in Western North Carolina that are Cherokee related. And so this Heritage Trail allows people to get off the beaten path and go visit some of these locations. Some are actually in another county, which is called Graham County near Robbinsville, North Carolina, where you have the Snowbird Cherokee. And those are the Cherokee who actually hid in the mountains and escaped the whole Trail of Tears. And so they've been here for generations and generations. And we've got sites on the trail featuring some of those locations. And then actually, Chief Junaluska did go, who was from Graham County and Robbinsville area. He did go to Oklahoma, but he walked all the way back. And it's a very powerful story to tell about how important these mountains and this land was to our Cherokee people. Another area, this region in Western North Carolina was also known as the breadbasket of the Cherokee. So we do try to highlight that. And so this region was actually not only the spiritual epicenter, but the agricultural center for the Cherokee Nation. We have an area where there are ancient petroglyphs that we've worked with the tribe and another one of our counties in Jackson County to be able for folks to go out and actually see those petroglyphs. And so the important thing when we started this trail was that we talked to our partners in Cherokee and met with a variety of different people to make sure that these spaces that we wanted to highlight were okay with them. That is really important because in every community there's sacred spaces that a community does not really want to share with visitors, or they want to keep those sacred and to themselves. And so that was an important effort that we had to make before the start of this trail. And we were very thankful that a funding organization in Cherokee, the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, which received some funding through the Harris Cherokee Casino to use as grants, helped to fund this project. And so that really helped to give this project a good housekeeping seal from the Eastern Band. Next slide, please. Another effort is our music trails, which highlights the importance that Cherokee music and gospel, bluegrass, old time music, blues, and ballad singing has played in the history of our country and some of the beginnings here in Western North Carolina. And so we've worked really hard to highlight those places in Cherokee and highlight those influences that had an impact on how our music, our traditional music as it's known today in the Southern Appalachians, was influenced by Cherokee. We actually are now working on a program called Fine Tuned, where we are helping to support emerging artists. We've taken a class of 6 artists who are extremely talented, but need help on the business side of the music. And 2 of those are songwriters, flute players, and storytellers from Cherokee. And we'll be launching an album with these this music and songs and storytelling in spring of next year. But we've always tried to make sure that we stay in touch with our Cherokee partners and ensure that they are included in all the areas of our focus. Next slide, please. Let me just talk a couple of minutes just about some of the grants that we've given to communities. The small town of Hayesville, also in the far west, was really the center point of the valley towns, what was known as the valley towns of the Cherokee region. And one of the things that they wanted to do was to interpret their Cherokee heritage. And Hayesville is a small town of about 300 people. And most of the people there have some Cherokee heritage in their DNA. But they really didn't realize how valuable that heritage was, because again, after the Trail of Tears and even into the 30s and 40s, 50s, the Cherokee that were here in Western North Carolina, as in other parts, other Native tribes across the whole country, many of them were sent to re-education camps, and it really squelched their culture. And so we provided a grant to Hayesville and partnered with them to work with the Eastern Band to make sure that what they created, and what they've done is that they've created a Cherokee Heritage Park, which has a recreated, a replica of an authentic Cherokee winter house and agricultural barns, as you see here, and open spaces, as you see here in the background. And so this has become a tourist attraction, if you will, and an area of focus for interpretation in this small town. And all of the kids in their school system come here, have programs, learn about the importance of this history to their community. And then once a year, they do a huge Cherokee Heritage weekend. And as you can see, they're doing the friendship dance in the second slide that I've shared. And as you can see, there are people of many colors, and it's all about really a sharing of that culture. Next slide, please. One of the most recent grants that we have also given was to Nikwasi, which is a nonprofit organization that is helping to build a Cherokee corridor, a cultural corridor that is connecting all of the sacred mounds. Some of those mounds are going to be viewable to the public, but some will not be. Again, what are those sacred places? But they're also recreating an apple orchard of original apples from this area that the Cherokee cultivated. So as you can see, they've got their folks out there planting. These are little seedlings. They're not pretty yet, but here in the next few years, they will be sprouting up and they'll have a true heritage apple orchard, Cherokee Heritage Apple Orchard. Another project which really has impact on the Eastern United States. This was just, again, our grants are small, but we gave a grant to I guess you would call it their natural heritage office with the Eastern Band. And they are, the eagles are very, very important ceremonially to the Cherokee. But what they're going to be doing in the long run is creating an eagle aviary, a place that they can care for injured eagles, and also be able to share the importance of all wildlife and its importance to Cherokee history, to their culture, to their spiritual center. And it's my understanding is that it will be the only eagle aviary of its type in the Eastern United States when it's completed. So it's just in the planning stage now and has 5 years to go, but we've certainly partnered to help at least get the study done for that. Okay, next slide. One of the final things, a project, a new cultural project that we have created over the last, it's taken us 5 years to get this done, but we launched the Blue Ridge Craft Trails in March of this year, which is 340 craft artisans, both contemporary and traditional artists, galleries, and arts institutions where the public can find authentic handmade craft made right here in Western North Carolina. Craft is a big, is an economic driver here in Western North Carolina. We have probably right now about 5,000 craft artists who live in this region. It's been historically important. The Koala Arts and Crafts Center, also another partner over in Cherokee, was the first Native American craft co-op in the United States. And they're over 75 years old now. So we've got a lot of history that is undergirding our heritage assets here in the region. But I want to share a video with you We have been really working to share authentic stories about our communities and how craft fits into the community. And so I'd like to share this video that we did about Cherokee artists and their culture. So if we can, and I think this just tells a beautiful story.
For people who may know about the Cherokee, they may think of the Trail of Tears era. That's an important, vital part of our story, but we're more than that too. We want to be able to tell the history, but also help them understand that we are still here and that we're a thriving, growing, vibrant community.
Before we went into a tourism economy, these things had a practical purpose. All of our crafts that you see have sort of a revitalization happening. There's a lot of younger folks that are learning.
There's no place like anywhere that I know in the world that I'd rather be is in Cherokee, because we have everything that you could possibly want when it comes to Native art. There is a lot of things to do in Cherokee. I highly recommend them to go to the museum and to the Oconee Indian Village. They're doing the same thing today as they would have done years ago.
Well, our goal here at the village is to give out true, authentic Cherokee culture. We say it's good to come here to the village because it's a living history museum. You can watch it being done right in front of you. If you get kind of immersed in the culture, it helps resonate and set deep within our guests who show up, so they can take a piece of who we are as Cherokee people with them.
Each piece is created for an individual. You just have to find that piece. I created your piece, but you have to identify it. The most important thing is the wampum. The wampum is the identity of the Cherokees. You know, this is who we are as individuals.
There are a lot of places in Cherokee that you can come to and get the culture and the history. But if you come see me, you might get to help me bust some white oak. Or I'm gonna hand you a piece of clay and let you make you something. Or if I'm working on baskets and you wanna grab some splints and start scraping, there's a time to learn. It's the hands-on that you don't actually get in other places.
So Matthew Tunai, who is featured as the storyteller, also wrote the music and played the flute on this piece, which I think is just really beautiful. I guess in closing, I do want to just say that one of the things that about our heritage is that it is ever changing. One of the other grants that we gave, of course, our grants are very small and they're used to leverage other funds. But there was a really nice art exhibit where especially younger Cherokee artists created their own interpretation of the Cherokee syllabary in a very contemporary way, and it won an award from the Southeastern Museum Association. But I think for us, and the way we relate is that it's just important to have just a, be of kindness, humility, and also just offering, space and time, and really talking to our partners. And really, some of our family, we have really close relationships with some of the folks on the tribe. They're kind of part of our extended family, and it's just at a person-to-person level. And one thing I learned long ago, I think across the bridges, music is always a great way to bridge across, and art, great way to bridge any difficulties, but also just the concept of family. Most everybody has a family. They love their family. All cultures have their own concept of family. And when you can connect on some of those really intimate levels, and it really does a lot to help with relationships. And that's one of the things that we try to do here at Blue Ridge. And I don't know if there's time for questions. I see there folks.
Yeah, there is some time for questions, Angie.
Okay.
So,
and there's things in the chat too.
Yeah, I don't know. They just like the video a lot. Okay, so are there questions for Angie that you have about Blue Ridge's work with the native, well, primarily the Cherokee? Questions? Holly, do you have a question? You just popped on screen. Okay.
I might say that we have a number of the northern or the eastern band at Haskell Indian Nations and here in Lawrence, Kansas. So met with a lot of their students. They have a strong representation here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they did the a call for artists for that art exhibit I was telling you about, they didn't just focus it on the members of the tribe here in Western North Carolina. It was a national call for Cherokee artists, and at the reception for the exhibit, I was really surprised at how many folks were all over the country that were Cherokee. I didn't realize that.
So Angie, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you said that on your, I think it's your board, you have it like a position for a person from the Cherokee tribe. But what else have you done as an organization to kind of over time develop your relationship with with the different parts of the Cherokee tribes that you work with out there?
Right, sure. I think, and let me just say, now we have 2 members of the Eastern Band on our board. But I think the important thing for us, we just have to stay in touch. And when we are starting a new initiative, and the initiatives we've started basically are our 3 trails. And every time that we have hosted or began those initiatives, we always do listening sessions. And we always have a listening session in Cherokee. And we work with our partners there to get as many people as we can to those meetings, because their input is very valuable. We've done that with the music trail, with the craft trail, and also with our heritage trail. And I think a lot of it is, and again, I mean, I've been at this organization for 13 years, but this work started before I got here, and I'm just, my role and with our staff is just continuing it. And I think you just have to nurture those relationships. You have to stay in touch, and it takes work. It takes going out and visiting with them and talking to them. So I would say that that's one of the major ways that we've connected. We don't build trails, and our work is not, we give small grants for historic preservation, but we're not trying to refurbish buildings or anything like that or build trails. A lot of the work we do is, development, cultural development, interpretation, and some preservation.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are just about out of time. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. I would like to thank you all for tuning in today. Our next call is actually going to be on December 15th, and we're going to kind of continue this conversation with some more National Heritage Area sharing. So thank you, Angie, so much for sharing today. We really appreciate it. I know there was lots of positive comments about the video. It was really good. So thank you for that. And thank you all for tuning in today, and we will see you next month.
Right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.